Could a society devise a punishment so horrifying that the agony itself becomes a public performance? In ancient Rome, cruelty was not always a result of unchecked madness. At times, it was a carefully orchestrated, systematic, and chillingly theatrical display designed with meticulous precision. Discipline within the Roman army was non-negotiable. The Roman legions were the backbone of the empire, and their efficiency and loyalty were paramount to the survival of Roman power. Any sign of weakness or failure to adhere to military protocol was met with a terrifyingly brutal form of punishment known as fustuarium. Fustuarium was the punishment reserved for soldiers who deserted their posts, showed cowardice in battle, or violated the strict laws of military conduct. This punishment was not carried out by the authorities or commanding officers, but by the soldiers themselves. The very men who stood beside the condemned soldier in battle would be the ones to deliver the punishment. The victim was beaten to death by their fellow soldiers who used heavy wooden rods or clubs. The beating was often so violent that it would quickly lead to the victim's death, and the punishment was done in full view of the other soldiers. This served a dual purpose. It acted as a public deterrent to any potential desertion or disobedience, and it reinforced the idea of loyalty and unity within the Roman legions. The terror of Fustuarium was not just about the physical pain. It was a punishment that stripped the soldier of any honor, condemning them to die at the hands of their comrades. The Roman army was built on the concept of brotherhood, and to be killed by those you fought beside was considered one of the most disgraceful fates a soldier could endure. For the Roman soldiers, the mere threat of fustuarium was enough to ensure that discipline was maintained, and the fear of facing this punishment kept many in line. A single act of disobedience could lead to a painful and humiliating death, showing the extreme lengths to which Rome would go to maintain order and control. Radish torture, one of the more grotesque and lesser-known punishments of ancient Rome, was a form of corporal punishment that inflicted excruciating pain and humiliation upon its victims. It is believed to have been employed during the rule of Emperor Nero, often used on slaves, criminals, or individuals who had offended the social or moral order of Roman society. The method involved the insertion of a radish or similar vegetable into the victim's body, typically through the rectum or vagina. The use of the radish was symbolic not only for its painful intrusion but also because of the natural sharp shape of the vegetable, which caused immense internal injury and suffering. The object was left inside the body for an extended period of time, ensuring that the victim endured long-lasting pain. The torture was not only physically devastating but also psychologically degrading. The purpose of such an act was to humiliate the victim as much as it was to inflict pain. The insertion of an object into the body, a form of violation, was meant to break the spirit of the individual, demonstrating the absolute control the Roman authorities had over the lives and bodies of their subjects. This form of punishment was particularly effective for those who had committed offenses deemed morally unacceptable by Roman standards such as blasphemy, adultery, or sexual crimes, as the act itself was a direct affront to Roman ideals of honor and propriety. While radish torture was considered an exceptionally cruel and humiliating form of punishment, it also had an enduring psychological effect on the victim, leaving both physical scars and a lasting mark on their reputation. It was meant to serve as a powerful deterrent not only to those who directly experienced the punishment, but also to the broader population, who would be reminded of the severity of defying Roman authority. One of the most iconic and brutal punishments in ancient Rome was the forced participation in gladiatorial combat with wild animals. This form of punishment was reserved for criminals, slaves, prisoners of war, and those deemed enemies of the state, often as a public spectacle to entertain the masses while simultaneously reinforcing Roman power and control. The practice of damnatio ad bestias, or condemnation to the beasts, involved sentencing the accused to fight against wild animals such as lions, tigers, bears, or leopards, typically within the confines of the Colosseum or other grand arenas. These animals, often starved and enraged, were released into the arena to face the condemned, who were armed with minimal, if any, weapons. The outcome was almost always a brutal and bloody death, as the animals would overpower and maim or kill their victims in a savage manner. For the Roman authorities, the spectacle of fighting wild animals served multiple purposes. First, it was a form of public execution that was designed to instill fear in the population. Watching a criminal or enemy being torn apart by wild beasts in front of a cheering crowd was a reminder of the empire's absolute power and control. These public executions sent a clear message. Roman law was supreme, and those who defied it would face gruesome and immediate consequences. The criminals or prisoners condemned to this fate were often stripped of their humanity. They were seen not as individuals with rights, but as entertainment objects, mere pawns to demonstrate Roman superiority and discipline. The crowds who attended these events in large numbers expected brutal displays, and the more violent and chaotic the spectacle, the more the event was celebrated. In many cases, the condemned would be forced to perform in front of the audience in a way that increased the humiliation and terror. Some of them would be shackled or otherwise rendered defenseless, making the fight all the more one-sided and ensuring a grisly end. While damnatio ad bestias was primarily reserved for criminals, the practice extended to a wide range of people. Prisoners of war or those who rebelled against the empire's authority were often subjected to this punishment, especially if they were captured in battle or were part of a revolt. It was a means to demonstrate Roman dominance over conquered peoples and to deter rebellion by publicly showcasing the fate of those who dared to defy Roman rule. There were also occasions when gladiators, trained fighters who were already accustomed to combat, were forced to face wild animals in the arena as part of their training or as a demonstration of their skill and bravery. These contests between human and beast were highly dangerous and often ended in death, as the animals' overwhelming strength made them formidable opponents even for experienced warriors. In the Roman Empire, death by poison was a common method of execution, particularly for those in high positions of power. It was a preferred means of eliminating political rivals, rivals within the elite, or individuals who were a threat to the ruling order. This form of execution was discreet, often leaving no obvious physical marks, and was seen as an efficient way to eliminate enemies without the public spectacle of execution by more visible means like beheading or crucifixion. The two most commonly used poisons in ancient Rome were hemlock and cicuta, both of which were known for their potency and lethal effects. Hemlock, derived from the plant Conia maculatum, was a neurotoxin that caused paralysis and ultimately death through asphyxiation, while cicuta, also known as water hemlock, caused similar symptoms leading to convulsions, respiratory failure, and death. These poisons were particularly dangerous because they could be administered without immediate detection, making them ideal for assassinations and executions in a society that valued secrecy and efficiency. Death by poison was often associated with the elite, including emperors, senators, and other influential individuals. The most famous case is that of Emperor Claudius, who is believed to have been poisoned by his wife Agrippina the Younger to secure the throne for her son Nero. Similarly, many of the early Roman emperors were rumored to have been poisoned by political adversaries or even their own family members, as it was a way to eliminate threats without the need for open conflict. These poisonings were frequently carried out by servants, food tasters, or close confidants who would mix the lethal substance into the victim's food or drink. For those outside the political sphere, death by poison was also used for criminals, especially those accused of treason, blasphemy, or corruption. The victim would be given a small dose of poison, often mixed into a drink or food, and the effects would take hours or days to manifest. Symptoms would begin with nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain before progressing to paralysis and eventually death. In cases of poisoning by hemlock, the victim would often experience a slow loss of muscle control, beginning with the legs and progressing to the respiratory muscles, leading to suffocation. The advantage of poison as a form of execution was its stealth. There were no crowds or public displays as with executions in the arena. It also allowed the assassin or ruler to appear innocent, as poisoning could be made to look like a natural death. This method was particularly favored by those in power who wished to eliminate enemies while maintaining a facade of legitimacy and order. For those who knew how to use poison effectively, it could become a tool for political manipulation and control.